What is going on? Welcome back to Trending Stocks. Today we're going to talk about SoFi. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, go over some of the data points and where I see things going in the short term. Before I get into any of that, make sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Always greatly appreciate that. And with that said, let's get right to it. So based on Friday, it did go down 1.96%. 41.6 million shares being traded, 49 is the average. And what was very weird about SoFi was the fact that there was no news, no justified reason why it went down almost 2%. So no news, nothing coming out from new analysts, so no new ratings. Majority of them were actually 5 or 6 days ago surrounding their earnings. And everything was kind of optimistic with the exception of Morgan Stanley and Wedbush. But still, beside the point, there was no real reason for this to go down other than kind of technicals. So I'll touch all about that. But when it comes down to this upcoming week, there's not really any data points to really cause a lot of volatility in the stock price. Rather, there is a ton of Fed speakers, and potentially that could cause some volatility in a positive way, negative way. Majority of them are talking on either the broader market, interest rate specific kind of topics, or banking. So once again, definitely there's been a lot of cracks starting within banks. So that might cause some volatility in the broader market, which of course would affect a lot of banks and fintechs and many others. So who knows, that might not necessarily work out the best. We'll just have to sit tight and wait. But as of right now, like I said, nothing has been really coming out from SoFi specific to really justify anything other than the technicals. But with it closing above $8 at the end of the business day, of course, going down after hours doesn't necessarily count when it comes down to options. But you are going to see a nice bump up in the stock price first thing, and I'll kind of explain that in a second. Based on Friday, there was $6.34 million in calls being purchased versus 1.69 million in puts. So based on this information, people are anticipating for SoFi to trend up, which is very optimistic. And like I said, you are going to see a nice bump up in the stock price because looking at the November 3rd expiry date, there was roughly around 14,000 in open interest at that $7.50 strike price and 24,000 at that 8. And like I said, with it closing at $8.01, all of those are going to be exercised. So market makers are going to have to cover a lot of that, meaning there's going to be a nice bump up in the stock price, probably within the first 30 minutes of the trading day. Whether that actually stays or not, it will most likely rely on the other external factors and also the technicals. But like I mentioned, I'll break that all down. Looking at some of the open interest for this upcoming week, it is anticipated to be roughly about 8 to 850. So kind of within range of here. And looking at some of the puts, oddly, a lot of people, weirdly enough, are anticipating for it to be sub $6. I'm not really sure why. Maybe there's some other fact that I'm not aware of, but there is around 46,000 in open interest at that $6 strike price. So I'm not really sure based on that, but no matter what, when it comes down to any options activity, it is just merely a sentiment. It does not move the stock price. And one thing I just wanted to bring up, I'll talk on shorts and obviously what it might do going into next week. So based on Friday, shorts did increase about 198,000 shares, 13.23% of the free float is being shorted, and 111.59 million shares overall are being shorted. And if we kind of look at the intraday chart right here, this all matches what shorts did. So shorts increased, and unfortunately a lot of this is in kind of a different time zone, so you kind of have to match it accordingly. But basically at this time period right here, this is where technically this kicked off. So shorts caused a little bit more of a hit, and it wasn't necessarily with SoFi. A lot of the other stocks I do cover, similar type of, I guess, hit or attack did occur from shorts. Some stocks recovered, some didn't. In SoFi's case, it didn't really recover back to where it was. So let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. But quickly going back over here, through the Interactive Broker, short availability does indicate that there's more than 10 million shares available to be shorted. So if shorts really did feel that SoFi was going to continue to trend down, they would double down. But they're not. So that's kind of a positive thing. Cost to borrow average is 1.06%. And this has been quite a while since I've seen this, but the minimum cost to borrow is negative 0.1%. So there is a broker out there physically paying people to short SoFi. So interesting kind of stuff. No matter what though, I'm just bringing this up as a benchmark. As I've said in the past, I don't see SoFi being a short squeeze play whatsoever. But when it comes down to the technicals, like I said, that was kind of the driving factor for a lot of the activity from Friday. So it did have a high of around $8.48, and with it closing at 8.01, it is trading between this P and this R1. So 765 is going to be the next line in the sand for this upcoming week, so very strong support. Vice versa, $8.43 is a very strong resistance, and like I mentioned, it kind of did bounce off of that. So a lot of this was just very technical driven, didn't really have enough to get above this R1. So obviously whenever it bounces off of a very strong either support or resistance, it consolidates and then tries again. So I do feel that Friday was more so just consolidation, nothing really more than that. Especially like I said, nothing actually came out from SoFi to justify that downtrend, and no analyst rating, nothing like that. So in my opinion, it was just more of a consolidation day. So I do feel going into next week, there is going to be still a little bit more optimism. Unfortunately, with it bouncing off of this 843, if it does fail to break above it once again, then that is going to be a little bit more of a further retracement. So meaning that you actually might be touching this pivot point before you touch this R1. So Monday and Tuesday are going to be very key points to watch for on the technicals at least, unless SoFi comes out with something specific to really justify an increase. At this stage, I think that would be a huge catalyst if Anthony Noto just bought, even if he threw 100,000 or whatever it is. I know that kind of sounds like it's not much, but still, once again, if he does do that, it shows that even at these prices, there's a good value, because he has typically done that in the past around the $4 or $5 range, which obviously does signal that at that price, it's an insane buy. But he's never really bought at these levels. So once again, maybe that might be that factor to give it a nice push up. But once again, let me know your thoughts on SoFi. Give yourself a shout out. Have you been buying, selling, holding? What have you been doing? I am very happy to say that I did buy, obviously during this very random dip after their earnings. So I did buy in, not the bottom, but at $6.90. So I'm pretty happy with that. Let me know your thoughts on all that. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Always greatly appreciate that. And with all that said, let's all make a ton of money on SoFi in at least this week, bigger picture, or whatever floats your boat.